Hi, I'm Jennifer Quick with Soul Clarity. Thank you for joining me again. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and let's follow along. Let's all ascend together. So this is part of my Dimensions, Ascension, and Akashic Records series that I'm working with on the video. So in this particular video, it is the sequel to the last one I did, which introduced us to the concept of the different dimensions and how creation moves through them. So and now in this video, I'm going to talk more about what that means to us, as well as what it means in relation to the Akashic Records, and start moving it into a little bit more access to our human experience, really. All right, relating it more back to the human experience. So again, subscribe to my channel, like this video, share it with your friends, and leave your comments. I love to hear what you think of it. And if you need any clarity, I'm happy to help. So I'm just going to start this video by doing a quick review of the dimensions. Just a quick one. So I'm going to write across the bottom here, we're going to write down here is the void, which is the everything. Right? Remember, we started at the point of all that is. So in the beginning, we had the first dimension, which was consciousness. Started to be created with consciousness. Thought happens first, and that was when the light or the spark, okay, so here's my little flame of spark there. I'm not an artist. That's obvious. You probably can't understand my chicken scratches, but it's the best I got. Oh, my camera keeps blurring it out. Okay, hopefully that holds with me. Sorry about that. Anyhow, I'm just going to have to deal with that for this video. Okay, so the first dimension is where the light spot, and this is where we are. The consciousness asked, what am I? And it is the dot. It is the single space, first dimension. All right. So then what happened is we have the second dimension, which is when we started to have polarity. So this is where the magnetics of our polarity happens, which is I am this, not that. You know, I am this dot, not that dot. This spark, not that spark. So we start to see ourselves in separation from the environment around us. That's where consciousness came. So the minute the consciousness came up to there, it created a form in the first dimension, which was the dot. Then as consciousness raised into the third dimension, which is the form, this is the densest. I want to put that in here. Densest. Okay, sorry, I don't know how to spell that. Anyhow, I can't think of that right now. Whatever. Form. It's the densest form. When our consciousness moved into the third dimension and it started to think in terms of, not only is it I am this, the dot, and I'm not that, the polarity, what pulled us into form was the working with the polarity. What are we versus them? Became the form. What really creates form is the we versus them. Okay, so it's a bigger answering of this, what am I? So when our consciousness rose up to the level where we started to realize that started to ask, what are we versus them? Our consciousness rose. So then, as we started to answer and understand that question, we moved up and started playing with it. In the fourth dimension, our consciousness rose to the fourth dimension, and it started exploring energy and motion, which is emotion. Energy and motion, which is, this is all talking about energy. The dot back in the beginning is the spark of energy. All right? Energy and motion is what created the polarity of energy. It's what creates the second dimension. Understanding the magnetics of this collection of energy versus that collection of energy is what creates the form. Because now in the fourth dimension, we are understanding how energy and motion is affected by our thought. We start experimenting with, if I think this way, then the energy, which is our emotion, energy and motion, starts moving, and it creates the vibration that holds polarity together to create form. So it's really that mastering the form. So as we start doing that in fourth dimension with our consciousness, we materialize in the third dimension an actual energetic form. Okay? So now in the fifth dimension, we have the information. So this is when our consciousness raises to the fifth dimension. This is where the information or the understanding, that's where the understanding happens. So at fifth dimension, we start understanding the results of our emotions and thoughts and how they affect our physical experience in form. Hopefully you're still with me. So as we gather information, then our consciousness, as it understands the information from below, from all these other experiences, as it understands that information, it starts to then look at, okay, sixth dimension. Our consciousness then raises up to the sixth dimension, and it says, well, what can I create with that form? How can I choose how the form is going to react? How does my form affect its environment? That's the question we start. We answer a question. We ask a question again. And that is, so we go back to form. And this is where we have choice. We start really moving into choice, and choice has this is why it's sixth dimension, is because we start making a conscious awareness of taking in this information and choosing what the action of that energy form is going to do. We understand how it relates to our environment, and that the choices that we make, the actions that we take, which is what choice is actual action, creates the form that we're living in the environment around it. So as our consciousness moved into form and starts mastering and understanding how, so first thing is the understanding, then we raise that in order to understand how to make choices. It creates the seventh dimension. Consciousness has to raise to the seventh dimension in order to understand the laws of creation. So the laws of creation are the rules, basically, the understandings that explains, law of attraction, law of polarity, law of relativity, which is time and space. It's understanding really what are the rules of the fourth dimension. That's what the laws of creation are in the seventh. What are the rules of this form? That creates motion in this organization of the form. So as our consciousness goes up to the seventh dimension, we can now actually start making choices of action, because choice is always in action, right? I'm going to put action. All right, laws of creation, action. So then as we do that, our consciousness begins to rise up to the eighth dimension, which is where we have the information or the understanding, again, of everything in the lower dimensions. Okay, this is again just a review, so I'm going to keep going on. Now we've got the ninth dimension, and the ninth dimension is again, what do I do with all this information to make bigger choice of form? So it's asking the question now, what is all of this? So really we're going to do what is this? Because in this sixth dimensional, we're asking the question, what are what am I? What are we? That's the question that comes there, that creates the form. And then what are we? And then at 6, what are us? So a greater aspect of not just us, it's us and them. So it's not just us, but it's us in relation to everything around us, right? And then again at 9th dimension, so what is all of this? and how it relates to each other. And again, how do we use all of this information to direct form? Third dimension. And as our consciousness expands into the 10th dimension, we now have the laws of universe. These are the laws that govern the entire thing. And then we go up to the 11th dimension, which is again the information. It's the understanding of all of this. And then we go up to the 12th dimension, which is again back to the what am I. So it's the understanding at this point that the I is actually all of this. And now it's going to ask, what does all that mean? And it moves on to the next bigger form. And I'm not going to go into those in any of this type of stuff. I want to work with you to help you understand this. So that's the quick review. Now, so we are, all of us, are individual first dimensionals. What am I? That is the first point. What am I? Self is first. Then it's I in relation to something else, which is form. So when we get into this first level of consciousness, where we're working with fourth dimension and third dimension, we are really working in the level of survival. It's about survival of the fittest. All right. There's a lot of, this is where we get a lot of fears, a lot of negativity, a lot of, positive, negative. It's all about relation. Then at fifth dimension is where we have the understanding of it. And then at sixth dimension, we overcome all that. So where we are in humanity's evolution right now is lying really, all of us will fall somewhere between the eighth dimension, and most of us are pretty solid into the fourth dimension and working pretty much consciously up into the fifth dimension. Not many of us are in the third anymore. Most of us on this planet have moved past the point of me survive and survival of, procreation. So most of us have moved past that point as a whole on the entire planet. Most of us on the planet are actually living above the point of just looking for food, shelter, and procreation. That's all the third dimensional consciousness and experience, fourth dimensional experience is about. Most of us are moving into the fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. So what happens now? So in between each, if you think of each one of these dimensions as actually having a scale within it, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I'm really bad at doing that. Okay, so anyhow, there is 10 points of reference between. So if you think of it on a scale of 10 points. So when we first enter into the fifth dimension, we're at the lower end of the fifth dimension. We're really still very much operating into not a lot of understanding of how our emotions affect each other's around us and creates our environment and everything. We're starting to really understand that. There's a lot of us that are just coming into that. When we just start coming into that, understanding the information, there can be a lot of fear because we don't actually really understand it yet. And those fears can create quite the dramatic stories to them. But as we get more into the fifth, into the understanding of the dimension that we're holding, we get a lot more clarity and things calm down. And generally when you're in the middle of a dimensional consciousness, your life is fairly calm, fairly reliable. There's a flow to it. There's an ease to it. But as your consciousness raises and it starts moving up towards the next dimensional awareness that happens, you start to feel a pressure and a resistance. It begins to build up a force that eventually will pop you over. And it can become quite uncomfortable. So it doesn't become fearful exactly, because you don't really know what it is that you're in fear of because you haven't risen to the next level. It's more of a pressure of a a need to do something, a feeling like, okay, now that I understand all this, what do I do with it? What do I do with it? And you start really asking that question, and you start feeling like there is more to life than what you're currently experiencing. And you start to feel that pressure. And that can happen at any one of these levels, that these dimensional peaks. Okay, so even if you're just moving from the 4th into the 5th, or the 3rd into the 4th, as you're at the upper end of your dimensional range, there becomes a pressure buildup. So think of it as an energy buildup. It's the rise of the energy buildup. And before it eventually things will start clicking and you'll pop over. So how this is showing up for people. Is that where I want to go right now? Yes. Okay. So how this shows up. So when you're moving from the 3rd dimension into the 4th dimension, once you pop over, so that's what, as you get to the top of the 3rd dimension, you really start asking those questions of, there's got to be more to life than just surviving. There's got to be more to life than just procreating. Maybe I could actually choose the person that I'm with, not just the convenient person that's there. That's when they start moving from 3rd to 4th dimension, is when we start to say, hey, maybe I want to choose who I marry and procreate with, right? We want to take a little bit more power. With each single one of these dimensions, we are stepping into a greater understanding and control of our own sovereignty. So in 3rd dimension, that's where we come up when we start pushing, going, well, that's where I want to choose how I make money and survive. I want to choose who I am with and procreate with. I want to choose the house that I'm living in. I want to make those choices. That's what we start to say. Then as we move into the 4th dimension, then we start saying, well, if I do this, if I go to school, then I will potentially make more money because I'll have more education, I'll have more value. So we start actually placing a value system to things a lot at that point too. If I clean myself up and dress nice and behave and say nice things, then I will attract somebody who maybe I see as a higher status, or somebody who is better fit to who I want to be with. So that starts happening in the 4th dimension. So when that first awareness starts happening, and this is kind of what's going on with teenagers a lot, maybe that's why kids are addressing this younger and younger now, is because moving from that 3rd to 4th, and starting into that 4th dimension, we at the beginning of it, we kind of have fears. We have fears, I'm not good enough. Is this the right outfit? Am I doing the right thing? Am I taking the right courses? Am I doing things right? And if I'm not doing them right, what's going to happen to me? What don't I know about the experience? So it really starts asking and messing with our heads and creating a lot of fear, because we don't know. We don't have any 5th dimensional understanding of it yet. We just have this desire to apply our experience and start taking action and noticing the reaction of it. And so with that, there is fear, because we, in the lower stages of that development, it's like I do something, and then there's the reaction, and it's like, oh, and I start playing around with my action reaction. And so we can have a lot of fears. We have great imaginations, and so we will apply stories there, stories of fear, stories of shadows. All right. Will start happening there. And I'm going to go more into that when I start talking. I'll talk a lot more in depth in probably another video about the 4th dimension and what actual collective consciousness, because this is also the point where we start interacting with collective consciousness. And I'm going to mark that down here. I'm going to put it here. I'm going to go collective conscious. Yes. Okay. That happens at 4th dimension, and I'll talk more about what that is in another video. But for now, that's, so when you first go into it, you have the fears of, really, am I not, what happened, what's going to happen if I succeed, what's going to happen if I don't succeed, if I do this or I don't do that, and we have fears that if I do it wrong, or what am I going to suffer, and we really are in fear of suffering over a lot of things. It's quite primal. So then as we get into the middle of the fourth, we sort of get a rhythm like, oh, okay, so no, if I follow enough people have proven out the plan that if I follow step by step by step, this is really, this is part of what I think Gen X, well, that's another thing, but this is evolution of mankind. You can remember, Gen X came through. We were raised with the idea that if you followed the plan that was laid out, if you went to school, got an education, then you went and got a good job at a good company, and then you met a nice person that you married, and then you had a family, and then you showed up and you were loyal to that company. That company would reward you and provide your old age security, and that was how the rules of life were. And so right about in the fourth dimensional conscious awareness, there was a very smooth pattern of understanding. And we just were living that standard of understanding. We followed the program of what we came to the understanding of at that point. But as our consciousness rose up towards the end of the fourth, to the higher dimensional aspects of the fourth dimension, we started getting, again, restless and saying, well, there must be more to this. What happens if I don't do the education? What happens if I don't do what my parents tell me to, and I decide to go out of the box, right? We start out of the box. That's where actually out of the box expression comes from, because at fourth dimension, what is a shape in fourth dimension? It is four sides, right? So we have, actually, I think that's what the square is. So you've got a square, which is fourth dimension, okay? And we have, if I can write this down, action, reaction, right? This is cause and effect. Result, understanding. That's the fourth dimension. It's the box. This is where thinking outside of the box is us pushing up against the top of the fourth dimensional understanding and starting to move into the fifth. So when that starts to happen, there starts to become very uncomfortable. The old way of doing things isn't working anymore. That's what happens when we hit to the top of the level. The old way of doing things just is not working anymore. So first that happens is we become restless in mind, and we start asking the questions, well, what else could I do? What more is there for my experience? And then our consciousness pops over into the next dimensional level, and it starts exploring with cause and effect, right? It starts exploring with, well, if I do this differently, what are the results? And we start experiencing different. And so that's what happens when we pop. That's why, again, a different level of fear arrives, because now you're in the beginning of the unknown of that next dimension. All right. So as our consciousness gathers more and more information about the experience we're having in application to the dimensional aspect we're at, which is what level we're doing here, those fears start to go aside, because as we move into, say, we're in the fifth dimension, we start moving into the understanding, and there's already proven track record. Oh, so if somebody does this differently, this is what happens. There starts to develop a new pattern of behavior based on the understandings that we have. Then as you raise to the top of that one, you start to get uncomfortable and start asking, what is more? And then eventually you start answering that and you pop over into the next. So now if we actually apply this to what's happening on our planet right now, in our society right now, with human consciousness, we are literally in an evolution. We are evolving, okay? And it's very literal. You can see it. So the first thing that happened was our technology grew as we had more understanding of our experience, we increased technology to make our lives easier, because we always want to make this third dimension, really it gets easier in a lot of ways as we go up, right? Because once you learn how to master form at sixth dimension and you're working with a sixth dimensional aspect, the actual basics of putting food in your body ain't as hard. Survival, like the basics, they're not as hard, right? What becomes hard is that now we don't want to do it the way we're told to do it. We want to do it our way. We want to expand how we've been doing it. And that's where the difficulty comes, because we're learning new. But if we went back to the old ways, there was a basics that worked. It becomes out of sync though. So as a collective, we are somewhere, most of us are residing somewhere between the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension. So what happens here? If you're watching this video, I'm kind of going to jump a little bit. I'm going to talk about the fifth dimension, because majority of what's going on this planet is happening in the fifth dimension with the information, which the fifth dimension in form, represented in form, is the internet. It doesn't actually exist. It's very etheric, but which is why it's fifth dimension, because fifth dimension is very etheric. It's not tangible. Third dimension is tangible. Even fourth dimension, you can feel the vibrations. But at fifth dimension, there isn't really a feel. There's a calmness. There's a sense of just knowing that can happen. But it's etheric. It's just, it's not tangible so much. It's much more mental. And that's the internet. That really is the internet. So as we grew from third to fourth, we created computers, technology, electricity, all of that kind of technology came along. And then we learned how to harness it, which has moved us into the fifth, right? So then we created tools of the third in order to harness the, and start putting into control our information that we were getting and everything, and balancing in the fifth. So internet is really the fifth dimensional manifestation of the fifth dimension. It is really the fifth dimensional. So most of us are on the planet at that stage. Now, a lot of people that are watching probably this video are actually pushing through to the higher awareness of the fifth dimension. And we're getting uncomfortable. We're getting really uncomfortable because we want more, right? We want a better world. We want, we see what the problems are, what's not working, what, like technically I'm okay, but I don't like the fact that the environment around me is not okay. I want better. I want more from my life. I want to control the experience we're having in third dimension more, because it can be better, right? We have a desire for much more intricacy. And so we become uncomfortable, we become restless. We look at the world and we're just like, no, this is wrong. What can we do better? And we start asking those questions, and we build up and as a pressure point. And that's kind of where society is right now, is this pressure point of going, we want better. We want better. And so these systems that have been in place are starting to break down because they need to be reinvented at another higher conscious level. And so those of us that are watching this video, most of us are right at that tipping point, and even moving, some of us are even right over that tipping point where we're in the sixth dimension. We're actually sixth dimensional beings, where we are starting to think about how we are going to control our form based on all the information that we have. So all the resources we have, how can we do things differently? And this is really other videos I've got that are talking about our imagination. That's really when consciousness is in the sixth dimension, it's really powerful about the imagination, because we're trying on what can we do? How can we do things differently? That's the consciousness in the next dimension. So when we are exploring those, now those of us who are moving our physical vibration into that sixth dimension, we are actually trying to apply new ways of doing things. These are where the inventors, the artists, the innovators, that's where all they are. Because they're thinking of new things. And it's a scary thing to be outside of the box, to think differently of what has been working, like to ask those questions and start answering by experimenting with what is going to work. Right? That's a scary point. There's a lot of fears that can rise up in that. Right? And that's a lot of the fear that's going on right now. What if we fail? What if we don't change the way we're doing things? What is going to happen? Right? That's climate change. Sustainability. Right? Where first world countries are shipping their garbage and everything off to third world countries. Well, eventually third world countries aren't. We produce so much waste and destruction on this planet. And at some point in time, are we going to be? What are we going to do with it? We're going to run out of places to do this stuff with. So where is it going to go? We need to get more innovative. So that's the fear. It's like, if we don't, what's going to happen? So that really gives us a strong anxiety. How are we going to do it differently? Right? That's also why people feel a lot of anxiety, is because they're pushing up against that ceiling of moving over to the next dimension. That's why there's so much anxiety. And young people are experiencing this younger than previous generations have. They're moving through this awareness much faster, right? Because this is really the evolution of humans, right? The very first thing that happens is, you're an egg or a sperm. They come together to create a form. They come together and the polarity of them creates a form. That's how it all starts, right? And so as the child grows up, they move through these dimensional awarenesses. Pretty weird, eh? So anyhow, that's what's happening. So our children, like teenagers, are actually, they're well into the fourth dimension here and moving into the fifth dimension in their awareness. They're much more aware of the problems of the world and what's wrong. Like they're in this higher frequency. That's why there's so much anxiety, because they're trying to figure all this stuff out. They feel it at such a deep level. They feel that pressure buildup that's happening. A lot of us that are older that are feeling that too, right? Like anxiety is wild around the entire planet. Same with depression. Depression is when we lose hope for the future because we can't see it, right? Because we're having trouble popping over and putting it into action. That's where depression can come in. So that's what's happening with a lot of us right now, is our consciousness is moving into that sixth dimensional awareness, and we are trying to physically move into that sixth dimensional awareness, where we are looking to apply the laws of the universe. So if you're feeling that pressure right now, really start studying the laws of creation and how you can use them in your life. This is why the spirituality movement is so big right now, is because that's where we talk about the laws of creation. That's, law of attraction is considered a spiritual concept. It's not, it's actually a science concept, but that's also where quantum physics is coming along with us too, right? Quantum physics is more of a materialized, it's more of the conscious representation of a sixth and seventh dimensional thinking. That's scientists that's raising our awareness. That's what's going on. So now I just want to, hopefully that answered a few things and made things a little bit clearer. If you're feeling that pressure, that anxiety, that depression, maybe start studying the laws of creation. I will have more videos on that as well, because I do want to talk about the laws of creation, because they are so important and to how we're moving forward. The last thing I want to do in this video is I just want to expand your awareness into a little bit bigger understanding of these higher dimensions. And I want to point out the Akashic Records now. Because in the field of people that are studying and understanding the Akashic Records, there is, and this is when I first started studying it, and everybody I've run across always says, Akashic Records are accessed at the fifth dimension. You go into the Akashic Records at the fifth dimension. And in a way, this is true, but it's also kind of not true. So what is actually happening is, once we move past our awareness of the fourth dimension, we move into this fifth dimension, and we have the information, we understand this, we can actually, particularly as we move into the higher frequency of this and into the sixth, we can really see all the results of different timelines. So we move into an understanding as we move into the 6, our awareness raises into the 6, we can actually see how all the different experiences that are happening down here in the 3rd and lower, how all of that is happening on multiple different timelines. So that's what we're actually accessing, because, how do I explain this? Okay. So timelines happen. A timeline is the experience of one dimension as it moves up through all of this until this point. Okay? Okay. I'm overcomplicating it for myself and trying to explain this. All right. So I'm going to go back here. So remember in my other video, I talked about how each one of these reflects below it. So we had 6th dimension is actually just a bigger expansion of the form. And same with the 9th dimension is a bigger expansion of the 6th dimension, which is therefore a bigger expansion of the 3rd dimension. And then again at the 12th, we have form again, which is an expanded form of the 9th dimension, which is then an expanded form of the 6th dimension, which is an expanded form of the 3rd dimension, which really actually is an expanded form of the everything. Or the dot. Kind of gets lost at that lower part. But now, by that same thing, the 7th dimension is a greater expansion of the 4th dimension. And the 4th dimension, sorry, 7th dimension is expanding of the 4th dimension, and the 10th dimension is an expanded expansion of the 7th dimension. And then the 5th dimension here, the 8th dimension is actually an expansion of the 5th dimension. And then the 11th dimension is expansion of the 8th, because the 5th is information, the 8th is more information, the 11th is more information again. The form is basic understanding of energy, of polarity, and what am I? It's the basic understanding of that. Whereas form is, 6th dimension is an expansion of what I can do with that form. 9th dimension is an expansion of what can I do with that form in relation to my environment. So it reflects downwards. And then say 12 is the expansion of that. So when we get up into here, time disappears. The relativity of time kind of ends at that point. Or it actually expands outwards even more, and I don't want to get into it. So at 8th dimension, though, this is where the Akashic records are, because all experiences from here come together at this point. So when you see that image where you have, here, can I draw it? You see it over here? Yeah. So I draw a little stick guy. Here's my little stick guy. And we have that energy that is coming through him, and it goes around him. Okay. Oh. That is a really bad drawing, and I apologize. I am not an artist. Hopefully you know what I mean by this. This is the, it's the infinity symbol. It is the energy field that you see around, what is it called? The, starts with a T. I can't remember right at the moment, but anyhow, I'm sure you guys know what I mean. I can drop it down in the comments or whatever. I can put it in the information down below what it's called. But it's the energy field that's around people, right? It's around everything. It's that energy cycle that's going around in loops, right? And it's created by this experience and expansion and expansion and expansion and expansion going in and out of the form. Is what is actually creating that tetron? No, that's not it. And all of this comes together at 8th dimension. So at 8th dimension, we have an understanding of all these different frequencies and timelines that are possible from all the different experiences that we are having. So at 5th dimension and 6th dimension here, we can read them. We can see all these different timelines that are happening, okay, relative to where we are. We can see them, but we can't actually access them. When we do clearing work in the Akashic Records, what we are doing is we are viewing them from this point, and we are putting a request up to the 9th dimensional form of ourselves, which is where our Akashic guides are. And they are the ones that are actually doing the changes in the Akashic Records. And the Akashic Records are really all the information that we've experienced up to whatever level we are experiencing. Now, the interesting thing is that what happens at 5th and 6th dimensional, as you get into this awareness and move up, it's actually as we move into the 6th dimension is where we're going, because the 8th dimension, we have all this information of everything that's happened below it. So from this point, that's why we can view other results. And when we go into the Akashic, we can view them, and then we can request access. We can request them to come online for us. But it's actually the guides at the 9th dimension that are doing the work in the Akashic field. But the Akashic field has all the information. It's so valuable because it's so much information that helps us understand the 6th, 7th, and it's the information collected by the 6th and 7th experiences. That's why it's so valuable, right? And on top of that, when we heal and when we request healing from this higher dimension, it can actually go in points where our energy has gotten stuck, that is holding us back from moving up in our consciousness. There's energy that's just become so, fear-based, is really slows down the speed of energy. And so there's trauma or something in our past, or beliefs that are directing us into preventing us from growth, we can go into the Akashic Records, identify it, and heal it. Request 9th dimensional domains to clear it, because it's through the understanding of it that we can actually let it go and choose differently. Okay, so that's the end of this video at this stage, and the next video I will carry on from there and go deeper into understanding and working through this process of raising our vibrations and where it's going from here, what we can do, how we apply the law of creation, and helping you step into the power that you now have available to you as we move into the 6th dimension. So hopefully this is clear. If you have any comments, please put them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. Please subscribe to my channel, like this video, and share it. Thank you all for listening to me, and it's a fantastic journey out there, and I'm certainly glad that our souls are crossing. Love you all. Bye-bye.